Hello, fellow book readers. My name is John, and today I would like to talk about the books I read in March. I know it's a little late, but better late than never. In March, I read 11 books, and there were a lot of highs and some lows, but mostly highs. And I actually finished a big series and started another series. So, without further ado, let's talk about the big series I finished first. Uh, so the first book I read in March or I finished in March, I think I actually started it in February, was Oathbringer by Brandon Sanderson, which is the third book in the Stormlight archive. And this is a great book. Uh, I did not think it is as balanced a book as Way of Kings or Words of Radiance, which were the first two books in the Stormlight archive, but it has arguably the best climax in the entire series of all five books that have been published so far. Uh, in my opinion, it does actually have the best climax of the five books. The battle scene at the end of the book is both tense, heart wrenching, easy to follow, and it's just good. It's perfect. It's what you want in a climax, and I thought it worked really well. I can't give it the full perfect book rating because I did think that the beginning was a little slow, especially compared to the first two books. And I thought the Downer flashbacks, he was the flashback character in this book, were not quite as good as the Kaladin or Shallan flashbacks. And that's just my opinion, that they didn't work as well for me, but they were still good. It's not like they were bad. I still had a good time with them. I just didn't think they were as great as the others. And like I said, I thought the beginning was just a little bit slow and prodding. But still a great book, and I gave it 4 stars, which for me is a great book. The next book I read this month was the fourth book in the Stormlight Archive, Rhythm of War, by Brandon Sanderson. Of course, and this is the fourth book in the Stormlight Archive. When I saw online that this book, and I didn't look until after I finished reading and after I already gave my rating. When I saw online that this is a lot of people's least favorite Stormlight Archive book, I was pretty surprised. To me, this is a perfect book. I thought the two main plot lines of the book, which is the tower takeover by the fused, and Shallan and Aladdin in Shadesmar when they go to the Honor City. I thought those two plot lines were great, like perfect, great. Everything about those plot lines I love. Every single scene in those two plot lines I thought was perfect. Like I loved it. And then you have the Dalinar plotline, which I would call the third plotline in the book, but it does have a really, really good climax that sets up Wind and Truth. The climax of that plotline is great, or perfect, if you want to even say that. The only weak part of this book was the flashbacks. I did think the flashbacks were the weakest probably in the entire series, but they were still good, and they were not, honestly, a gigantic part of the book. So overall, I thought this was a perfect book, and I gave it 5 stars. It's my first perfect book of the month. I think it's my only perfect book this month. Yeah, so this would be my favorite book of the month, Rhythm of War. And like I said, I'm surprised it's a lot of people's least favorite in the Stormlight Archive. Okay, and then finally, the third book I read in March was Wind and Truth by Brandon Sanderson, which is the fifth and final book of this arc in the Stormlight Archive. This book's a gigantic book. It's just huge, very, very big. I was disappointed in this book, but that doesn't mean I thought it was bad. Like, I still thought it was a very good book. Not even a good book, a very good book. I did think it was a little bit too long, and I think my main problem is I had misguided expectations. I was thinking like when I was thinking arc, I was thinking like Dragon Ball Z, like the end of like the Saiyan saga. Then we go into the Frieza saga. That's what I was thinking when that's what I was expecting when I heard, oh, it's the end of arc one. I was like, okay, it's gonna be a gigantic end to this arc. It's gonna set up something for the next arc, maybe, but it's gonna be a big, big end to this arc. And it's like kind of really what we got. I mean, there is like a big end, but it really is just like a continuation. So it just wasn't what I expected. This is more like the end of a season to me than like the end of an arc. I think if we called it seasons, I would have had different expectations. And that's on me. That's not on Brandon Sanderson. Like, this was still a very good book. There's still a lot of stuff in here I loved. One of my favorite scenes in the series is the Syl and Kaladin dance scene, which takes place in this book. I think that scene is awesome. It's so heart moving. Like, I loved that scene, and there's a bunch of others too that really worked. I did think it was, like I said, a little bit too long. I thought this probably could have had 100 pages cut off of it, but again, that's just my opinion, and I still thought this was a very good book. 3.5 stars. 3.5 stars to me. Anything anything between 3 stars and 4 stars is a good book, and that means I enjoyed my time reading it. I did enjoy my time reading it. Is this something I would pick up and reread? Probably not, but I would because it's part of a series that has a bunch of great books in it. But if like this was a standalone, I probably would not be picking it up and rereading it. But I still enjoyed my time reading it. So, what a good book is to me in that range. Okay, so the next book I read was a ebook. I don't have the physical copy. Called Along the Razor's Edge by Robert J. Hayes, or by Rob J. Hayes, I should say. And this is an indie book, I think, indie published, or it might be self-published. I'm not entirely sure which one of those is accurate, but it's one of those two. And this is a grimdark fantasy book, and I had a good time with it. I didn't have a great time with it, but I had a good time with it. It's grimdark. All the characters are, sort of gray characters, especially the protagonists. But the book does give you some really good antagonists to hate, so you still find yourself rooting for these like problematic heroes. And it tells the story of a sorcerer that has been imprisoned by this empire these two empires were warring against each other, and one empire lost, and they imprisoned this sorceress, and they put her, in this very like dark and evil prison called the Pit. It's underground, and this place is just awful. It's the worst, and it's a story about her and her friends trying to escape the prison. And I think it's told really well. The setting did sort of drag on me a little bit. Like, we were there so long, but I still had a good time reading it, and I was still like kind of hooked. Like, okay, how are they going to break out of this? Are they going to be able to do it? So like, it did have a good hook that kept me invested in the book. So I had a good time, and I give it 3 stars. It's a good book, not a great book, but it's good. The next book I read was called The Lessons Never Learned, which is the second book in the War Eternal series, which is what Along the Razor's Edge. So Along the Razor's Edge is the first book in the War Eternal series. The Lessons Never Learned is the second book in the War Eternal series. Again, this is by Robert J. Hayes, or I should say Rob J. Hayes. This one I thought was an improvement on the first one, mostly because we did a lot more world building in this one, and I thought the world was really fascinating. We're no longer trapped into the confines of the prison, obviously. And we did a lot of world building in the world and the people. There was new characters introduced, and in this book you're trying to help these one people that they consider gods beat these other people who they also consider gods. So there's like these two factions of gods, and our main character is sort of aligned with this one faction to try to face the other faction. All this while trying to avoid the empire that imprisoned her in the first place. She doesn't want to, obviously, go back to prison. And there's a lot of twists and turns, and the climax particularly has a really, really good twist that I liked a lot. So, yeah, I was invested in this one. Again, it's not a super long book either, which helps. And I thought the character building here was a lot better than the first book, and while staying true to the grimdark style. I would give The Lessons Never Learned 3.5 stars. Very good book. And then I read the third book in this series, and this is a series of 5 books, but really the third book ends this arc. And this book actually ends an arc. It feels like an arc. It doesn't feel like, they're just sort of ending a season like Wind and Truth did. This one feels like it completes it. So I felt good just stopping here. I did not read the 4th and 5th book yet. I will come back and eventually read them, but I didn't do it yet. So yeah, the third book is called From Cold Ashes Risen. It's the third book in the War Eternal series by Rob J. Hayes. I thought this one was good. Yeah, and there's more twists and turns in this one. A lot of good twists, a lot of good turns. The antagonist is somebody you can really hate. Again, he does a great job writing antagonists. I love the way he writes his antagonists. They're very, very good, easy to hate. Um, and I think you get more sympathy for the protagonist in this one, the main character. She gets more humanized, which is weird because there's something very unhuman about her in this book, but I'm not going to spoil. Uh, yeah, and there's just one part particularly. I think it's about three-quarters of the way through the books that's very traumatic and very tense, and I had my eyes glued to it the entire time I read it. It was perfect, and I thought it ended really nice. Like I said, it ended like it felt like it ended a saga. I thought this was very good. Also gave it 3.5 stars. Okay, the next book I read, which I also read in ebook form, so I don't have the physical copy, unfortunately, is The Color of Magic by Terry Pratchett, which is the first book in the Discworld series. And this is actually the second Terry Pratchett book I read. First book I read last year was Good Omens, and that was actually my least favorite book of the year. I didn't have that great a time with this one either. I thought this was much better than Good Omens, but I still didn't have a great time with it. I didn't even really have a good time with it. So I think I just realized Terry Pratchett's writing probably isn't for me. The humor just doesn't really land, which is weird because I actually like British humor, like a lot, but it just doesn't work for me. Maybe in book form, it just doesn't work. I also thought this book suffered from some other problems. It really felt like four short stories that were stitched together to make a book. So it felt like this book told four different stories in one book. So you would end one story and go on to the next one, and they called it. I think they just called it parts, but it felt like four different books or four different novellas, and it almost like had nothing to do with this next novella that you were reading. The main character, whose name is Rinswald, is a really terrible wizard. I don't mean he's a bad guy. I mean he's awful at being a wizard. Like he can't do magic basically, which is kind of funny when you think about it. But I didn't find him to be that interesting or sympathetic. Um, but I did enjoy the character of Death. Death by far was my favorite character in this book. And I think there's like 4 or 5 books where Death is the main character in this World Series. So if I ever go back and read another Terry Pratchett book, I think I would read one of those books where Death is the main character because I really enjoyed Death. Fortunately, he was not in the book long enough to make it more enjoyable for me. So, like I said, I didn't think this book was terrible. I did not have a good time reading it either. I didn't have a good or really a bad time reading it. I found my mind wandering a little bit when I was reading some pages. So I'm going to give it 2.5 stars, which really just means it's a fine book. For me, it was just a fine book. It didn't land quite as well as it probably did for other people. Okay, the next book I read was A Sorceress Comes to Call by T. Kingfisher. This is the first time I ever read a T. Kingfisher book. This one's kind of short. Very, very good, though. Like, this was a great book for me. It's a dark retelling of The Goose Girl, which is a fairy tale that I've never read before, or even heard of, I don't think. I mean, maybe I've heard of it, but honestly, I couldn't remember it when I read that online. I was like, I don't know what The Goose Girl is. But this is awesome. This book is awesome. And this is by far the antagonist that I hated the most this month. Like the antagonist is this mother of this girl who is it, and the mother is a sorceress, but she's like not a good sorceress. She's evil. She has no problem using her magic to control people's bodies to make them do what they want. She even does it to her own daughter. She has very, 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 very questionable motives. She just cares about money and getting rich, and she's trying to marry this one person just to get rich, but when somebody tells her no, she doesn't have any problem killing them. Like she has no morals at all. She's a horrible person and very easy to root against. And she also has this familiar, which is just like her magical ally that she has bonded to her, and the familiar is in the shape of a horse. That's some traumatic stuff, especially for the daughter. And then our protagonist is this daughter and the sister of the man she is trying to marry, who is older. So she's trying. So you get point of views from both the child, who's a teenager. I think she's like 14, and the like older woman. And both of those point of views are great. Very good stuff. This book is quite creepy, but quite good, and I really, really had a great time reading it. This is a 4-star book for me, and I actually can't wait to read more T. Kingfisher. Probably going to read Nettle and Bone sometime over the summer. Okay, and then I started. I finally started the one series I said I was going to read this year. One of the 5 series I said I was going to read this year. Finished Stormlight, and I went right into the next one. I don't know what I was thinking. Probably should have waited a month because this is another gigantic series. I read Eye of the World by Robert Jordan, which is the first book in the Wheel of Time series. This book was just fine for me. Just fine. There was a lot I did not love about this book. A lot. I thought it was way too long. I thought about 100 pages too long. I didn't think the book really had a plot until about 70% through it. That's when it's like, okay, we're going to actually go do this now. It's just like, seemed like it came out of nowhere. And I did not love the main characters for the most part. Like, I thought Rand was whiny as heck in this book. Super whiny. I really hated Rand in this book. And he gets the majority of the screen time in this book, or page time. So that did not help me at all. And I thought Matt was just the movie version of Pippin from Lord of the Rings. Not the book version. Pippin in the books is actually much different than Pippin in the movies. But I thought he was the movie version of Pippin. He just made the worst possible choices every single time. So, like, if he was given option A, the right choice, option B, do nothing, option C, make the worst possible choice possible. He chose option C every single time in this book. And then he also just told everybody everything, like Pippin does in Lord of the Rings. The movie version of Pippin, not the book version. He just couldn't stop. He couldn't shut up. He could never keep his mouth closed, even when he was told to. So I thought he was a pretty terrible character in this too. I did kind of enjoy Egwene, who happens to be my favorite character in the series right now. And I really liked Moiraine too in this book. Those were the only 2 characters I really enjoyed in this book. What I found admirable about this book was the world building. There was a lot of good world building in here, and that really kept the book from like entering the I hate you territory. The world building was really good, and I thought the magic was really cool too. The Aes Sedai stuff is awesome. So yeah, I gave this book 2.5 stars. It's just a fine book. I didn't have a good time reading it. I also didn't have a bad time reading it. It was fine. So I was kind of not looking forward to starting the next one, but then I read The Great Hunt by Robert Jordan, which is the second book in the Wheel of Time series. And this book had one of the best climaxes I've ever read. The last 140 pages of this book is by far my favorite part, my favorite reading of the year, probably. I think it's even better than the Oathbringer climax, which is insane to say that I read like 2 amazing climaxes this month. But this book was so tense, the climax of this book. I loved the last 140 pages. It doesn't get the perfect rating for me because I thought there was some stuff in the beginning, particularly Rand and Celine and what's his name? Loyal. They were traveling through the Portal Stone. That part dragged for me a little bit because Rand was still very whiny in this book. I still did not really love Rand in this book. And Matt was the same as book 1 too, but he was kind of not in this book as much, at least like as like a talking character. He was in this book because he does something really important in here, but he wasn't as much. He didn't have as much presence as he did in the first book. But like I said, the climax of this book was really great, and I thought the Aes Sedai stuff in this book was awesome. I love the Aes Sedai politics. The Aes Sedai politics, to me, feel like they were pulled right out of A Song of Ice and Fire. It feels like I'm reading George R. R. Martin politics style, which is crazy because this book came out, I think, 5 years before Game of Thrones came out. But that's what it felt like to me. The Aes Sedai stuff is awesome. And then there's this really tense moment where one of our main characters gets captured near the end of the book. And that leads to the climax. And it was so good. So tense, so panicky. Awesome stuff. I like this book a lot. Great book. Like I said, I can't give it the perfect star because I did have some problems with it, but the climax was awesome. 4 stars. Great book. The last book I read this month was The Dragon Reborn by Robert Jordan. The 3rd book in the Wheel of Time series. This was a more balanced book than The Great Hunt. Did it peak as high? No, it didn't. But there was almost nothing bad about this book. And this book actually is the first time I enjoyed Rand. Rand was awesome in this book. He's not in it that much, but he's awesome when he is in it. He feels like a different character. He's no longer as whiny. He's kind of getting a little crazy, but I expected him to get crazy, and I wanted that. I'm not like rooting for him to go super crazy, but I wanted him to stop being whiny and like they said he was going to go mad. So like show that to me, and this book did, and I really enjoyed Rand. Now he's getting more confident in this book. Awesome stuff. Matt feels like he just got rebooted. He feels like he got a fresh coat of paint. He feels like a totally different character. He's still headstrong like he is in the first 2 books, but he's not. He doesn't make the worst possible decisions all the time now. So yeah, a much better character, and he had a great arc in this book. He might even be the MVP of the Dragon Reborn. But I also think I was thinking Egwene again was awesome. So was Elaine and Nynaeve. Those three characters rule. And I've avoided basically all spoilers for this book, so I don't know how people feel about these characters at all. So I'm trying not to be influenced at all by anybody else. But yeah, that's what I thought. I thought this book, like I said, it doesn't peak as high, but the climax is still great. So I still gave this book 4 stars, and it's right there with the Great Hunt. I think I might even put it above just because front to back, it's just I think a bit better of a book, even though the climax isn't as good. So yeah, it's not a perfect book still because I don't think it ever peaks super high at any point, but front to back, it's a very good book with some improved character work, in my opinion. So yeah, that's my book reading for the month. Um, Sorry for being so late, but I have been reading a bunch more Wheel of Time, so I've just kind of been in the Wheel of Time mode. Those books are long and thick, and they take up a lot of my time, but they've been good. I've been enjoying myself. I will say that for my April video, so look forward to that. I hope to finish it in April, but I don't think I'm on pace to quite finish it. But I will get a lot of the Wheel of Time done in April. So there we go. Yeah, that's what I read in April. That's what I read in March, I mean, and I had a pretty good time, I think. Thanks for watching.